Assalamu alaikum guys, this is me
The two
Senpai
of you
Gamer-san. I'm your host Senpai. We are playing the game Choice of Wizard 1. Let's do this.
The two of you continue through the castle. Occasionally you hear distant things. A shout, a crash, even voices. Soon you come to a door with light streaming out through its cracks. You open it ever so slightly and peek in. You see a cloaked figure frantically pacing back and forth. You cannot see his face, but his hands appear to be human. You catch glimpses of his naked torso under the cloak. It is black with tattoos, and you think you make out at least one of the tattoos to be the symbol of Nerul, god of the undead. This reminds you of the tattooed body of a man hung in the city square only a month ago. He was believed to be an evil priest of Nerul, and was accused of terrible crimes, including raising zombies. Such priests are able to harvest power from their deities and cast dangerous spells. However, you have the element of surprise. What do you do?
Because
1. Attack with spells. Requires 2 mana. 2. Attack without spells. 3. Cast charm spell on him. Requires 3 mana. 4. Spy for a bit. You have 8 mana.
How about spy for a bit?
Where is he? How could she escape?
The man mutters to himself.
The sacrifice must appease him,
He whispers. He then starts toward the door you have cracked open. Quickly you move away out of sight and listen for a few seconds. You hear nothing, not even footsteps. What do you do? 1. Attack with spells. Requires 2 mana. 2. Attack without spells. You nod to Reginald, and the two of you burst into the room. Your quarry appears young, although his face is scarred. He
Wow.
looks at you with the expression of a man who is presently soiling himself. He ducks back as Reginald swings his sword, but not fast enough. The blade slashes his shoulder. He tries to run, chanting something that you recognize as the beginning of a spell. You strike him in the back with a bolt of flame that engulfs his cloak in fire.
Amazing.
The priest screams and thrashes just before Reginald cuts him down with one great cleave. Perhaps now that I reflect upon this, we should have tried to keep him alive. We still know not the fate of the rest of the caravan, you say with a frown. In battle there is no time for regret, and not a scratch on us this time. I call that victory, declares Reginald. Now that you are in the room, you can see that you are in living quarters. There is a bed near the wall and a good-sized chest in the corner. Treasure, you think, as you run over and try to lift the lid. Locked. That Nerulian priest did not die quietly, so perhaps you should have Reginald smash the lid with his sword and then get out of here. On
And
the
then
other
I'm
hand,
getting low.
there ought to be a key around somewhere. Maybe you should take a few seconds to check. What do you do? 1. Break the chest. 2. Search around a bit.
Search around.
You stand guard while I search, you say to Reginald. You kick the body of the priest over. The corpse is a bloody mess, but you do not have the time to be dainty about it. The man is nude other than the cloak and a golden amulet around his neck.
Wow.
The amulet is an unholy symbol of Nerul, the god of the undead. You would never keep such an evil thing, but it is coated in gold, so you could have it melted down. You rummage through his sticky cloak. Sure enough, you find a key. You earned 40 gold pieces.
Amazing.
You trot over to the chest, key in hand. The key has the same hue of metal as the lock, and you are optimistic that it will fit. You are fumbling with the key when you hear something off in the distance. A chill goes down your spine. Are more coming? Did they hear the priest cry out? What do you do? 1. Search the chest for traps. 2. Use the key now. You take time to look over the chest carefully. There are no obvious traps, You carefully insert the key into the lock. It is a fit! You close your eyes as you turn the key. The top of the chest pops open as though on a spring, and nothing happens. You exhale in relief. Inside is a bag full of gold pieces, some platinum engraved
I'm a
china,
goddamn
and a
rich.
small black-bound writing book. You earned 80 gold pieces. Then there is a low rumble of footsteps as you look up just as two priests burst into the room.
Unholy one, give me strength!
One of the priests shouts. With these words, a dark shade appears around his hand and then shoots out, striking Reginald, who flies back against the wall. The other priest grins at you. A dark ray springs from his outstretched finger, striking you in the shoulder. Cold pain spreads through you.
Oh
You
man.
lost 2 life. You have 10 life. You dive behind the bed for cover. What do you do? 1. Charm 1 requires 3 mana. 2. Firebolt requires 2 mana. 3. Distract with an illusion requires 3 mana.
How about attack with dragon?
You leap up from behind the bed with your dagger drawn. The Nerulean priest is ready and fires a black ray from his finger. You dodge, but the ray still grazes you. Painful cold radiates out from where you were struck. You lost 3 life.
Man.
You have 7 life. You jump up onto the bed and launch yourself at the priest, who shrieks as you stab
do
him
it again.
over 7 mana.
Illusion.
An interesting choice. You wave your hands and infuse yourself with magical energy. Now you must prepare in your mind the illusion. In order to project a convincing illusion, it is best to pick something you have seen before. But you are tempted to pick something fearsome in order to scare them. What will the illusion be of? 1. A horde of goblins. 2. A dragon. You cast the spell, and a large, snarling red dragon, as best you can imagine, fills the hallway. Reginald knows your spells and runs down the hall with the dragon, sword drawn. Around the corner appears 2 cloaked men, priests, you suppose. They freeze for a moment, completely taken by surprise, and then seem to disregard the illusion. They chant and hurl bolts of dark energy at Reginald.
So I only have 5 mana left.
An interesting choice. You wave your hands and infuse yourself with magical energy. Now you must prepare in your mind the illusion.
I'm
1.
gonna be illusion.
A horde.
Horde of the Gauntlets.
You cast the spell, and a horde of illusionary goblins armed with spears materialize, running down the hall, yipping and snarling. Reginald has worked with your illusions before. He knows what to do. He runs down the hall at a pace just behind your goblins, sword drawn. Around the corner appears 2 cloaked men, priests of Nerul, you suppose. They freeze for a moment, completely taken by surprise, and then begin hurling bolts of darkness at the goblins in front of the charge. The bolts go through the illusions, and you can see in their torchlight that the priests are furious at being tricked. Too late for them. Reginald closes on them with his sword and cuts them both down.
Amazing.
You take the time to search the bodies and
Wait, man. Okay.
You take the time to search the bodies and find golden unholy symbol medallions on each of them, as well as 1 silver dagger. Not bad for 20 seconds of work.
Wow.
You earned 60 gold pieces. I tire of looting corpses. Let us be off to find the merchants and a glorious reward, you
Yeah.
exclaim. Off you go deeper into the castle.
I'm
Soon
tired.
you find yourself in a library. However, all the books are gone from the tall wooden shelves, either stolen or destroyed. As a wizard, this is disappointing to you. All castle libraries have secret doors, you announce. After searching for a little while, you notice a small statue of a winged boy reading a book, worked into the stone wall. You press on the arm of the statue, and it shifts down. There is a grinding sound, and you see the bookshelf nearby crack open from the wall. You wedge your fingers into the gap and pry open the door. Immediately before you, stairs descending into the darkness. Dear listener, normally I would give you a choice whether or not you go down the stairs, but really, who finds a secret door and chooses not to investigate? And so, with lantern in hand, you descend a few steps and then listen. It is deadly quiet down here, and chilly. You urge Reginald to take the lead. After all, he is wearing the armor. There is a small metal lever on the inside of the passage that you suppose is what you use to open the door from the inside. Nevertheless, you decide to leave the door open. The last thing you need is to get trapped in this evil-smelling place. It is some time before you finally reach a small, empty chamber. On the far wall is a large iron door. Scrawled over the door in rusty red dye, or more likely, dried blood, is a set of elaborate symbols.
Gods, what is that?
Says Reginald, playing the lantern light over the symbols. It is writing in the infernal tongue, you say, a language of devils, demons, and other beasts that inhabit the nightmare universes.
At times, I do not envy your knowledge,
says Reginald with a faint shudder. The study of magic leads to many dark places, you say. The trick is to not wander too far into the void.
What does it say?
Asks Reginald in a tone that is not at all enthusiastic or curious. You study the symbols. They are crudely drawn, as though in haste, perhaps scrawled by bloody fingers. I cannot be sure. I believe it is a ward of some sort, a protection spell.
A protective spell using such a foul language?
Reginald sniffs.
I would expect a curse or a fiendish summoning.
It is protection against such a summoning. A barrier, you say. Evil knows evil best, and a spellcaster of black magic understands the need to protect himself from the terrors they bring into this world.
Agree.
Reginald grimaces and points the tip of his sword at the warded door.
Only a fool would go down there. Although, I am more a man of curiosity than wisdom.
You slap his shoulder, making a dull sound against his breastplate. As you
Right. God damn it.
You slap his shoulder, making a dull sound against his breastplate, as you have proven time and again. What do you want to do? 1. Open the door. 2. Leave. Maybe there is a treasure room beyond, you joke.
Fortune and glory, my friend. Fortune and glory, my friend.
Maybe there is a treasure room beyond, you joke.
Fortune and glory, my friend.
Reginald says with a broad smile. Your morale goes up a point. The
Amazing.
large iron door shudders and screeches as Reginald slowly pries it open. Once open, Reginald scrunches his face up like a dried fruit, and you soon realize why. A powerful stench wafts up from the dark stairs below. He takes a deep breath and plunges down the stairway. The two of you descend for some time before you enter into a large room eerily illuminated by green flaming torches fastened to each of the walls. Near the far wall is a dais leading up to a large obsidian altar. Upon closer inspection, you see candles in golden candle holders and a large golden bowl stained red inside. In fact, the entire altar is stained rusty red. Also upon the altar sits a book. The book is bound in what might very well be mummified human skin, with hand and finger bones embedded into the cover, as though the book were in the grasp of the dead. The title is in Infernal, but you do not recognize the words. Just before the altar is a narrow but deep pit. Shining the lantern in, you make out something gleaming white, a skeletal arm and hand. Reginald adds his light to yours and you can now see a heap of bodies at various stages of decay. The heap is crawling with rats and other vile scavengers.
Ah, man.
Sacrifices, the source of the stench, you mutter. I would bet my last copper the father of Sibba and the rest of the caravan are among them. Reginald makes a face of disgust.
I say we swiftly pilfer what we can from this unholy place and leave.
As he says this, you notice a darkness that seems to be collecting behind the altar, as though the fabric between this world and the abyss is ripping apart before your eyes. 1. Take what you can and run. 2. No time! Run!
Take what you can and run. Let's see.
You open your backpack and toss the book into your bag as Reginald gets to work snatching the golden bowl and candlesticks.
Wow.
You earned 100 gold pieces! You have not even cleared off the altar before you begin noticing an intense cold all around you. You look up and see that the darkness behind the altar has taken the shape of a man, a tall, spindly shadow with malevolent, pitted eyes.
Ooh.
Your souls are mine!
Oh, shit.
Hisses the thing, its voice echoing all around you.
Oh.
Demon! Run! You shout. Up the stairs you bolt, leaping 3 steps at a time. There is a wheezing snarl not far behind. You make it through the large iron door. The door is heavy, and the hinges are tight. Nevertheless, you expect that if you hurl your weight against it, you can knock it shut. But this will take time, and the demon is nearly upon you.
Oh,
1.
man.
Try to close it. 2. No time. Just run.
Both decisions are hard, man. What should I do? How about try to close it?
You run into the room, turn back, and slam your weight against the door, which grudgingly shuts with a whine of its hinges. Well, it almost shuts. Some debris has fallen in the way, keeping it open a crack. There is a snarl, and the door shakes, but the arcane symbols scrawling on the door appear to be a ward, meant to provide a barrier to spirits. You would like to open the door enough to kick the debris out of the way and shut it properly, but you do not dare. Instead, you concentrate on running as fast as possible up the stairway after Reginald.
Good job.
As you reach the secret door in the library, there is a great bang that echoes from below, followed by a jubilant shout.
Freedom!
Ah, crap.
"Keep running!" you shout to Reginald. He does not seem to need this encouragement as he sprints out the library door.
Demon is
You
out.
follow him out of the library and down several passageways. Rounding a corner, you are suddenly in a large and lavishly furnished room, filled with the soft light of dozens of candles. In the middle are 3 of the evil priests holding hands, surrounding what appears to be a pile of corpses.
What?
The men are chanting in the infernal language. One of the corpses begins to twitch. Just to the side of the priests stands the massive ogre, his pale white body and large coal dark eyes
Oh,
fix on Reginald. Meanwhile, the corpse that had been twitching springs up to its feet with alarming speed. You think you recognize him as one of the priests you had killed earlier. The undead creature levels its hungry gaze
Yep.
upon you.
They turn into zombies.
What do you do? 1. Attack with your dagger. 2. Blast them. Requires 4 mana.
I don't
But
know.
you don't have enough. 3. Charm the ogre. Requires 3 mana. 4. Run away. You have 3 mana. Kill them all, you shout. Reginald answers your call admirably, first intercepting the undead corpse with a mighty slash of his sword. Complete.
I wish I can return back. Man.
Kill them all, you shout.
I just used my...
Reginald answers your
Goddamn
call admirably,
life.
first intercepting the undead corpse with a mighty slash of his sword, completely decapitating it. The red eyes go dull, and the thing flops to the floor. Unfortunately, he puts so much power into the swing that he is now off balance. The ogre steps in and smashes him in the side with its club. Reginald flies against the far wall. You rush in with your dagger, stabbing. The ogre snarls in pain, pushes you away, and swings its mighty club.
So I have to control the ogre.
Wham! You feel your bones crack, and you hit the floor.
Oh!
You lost 6 life.
Oh,
You have 8 life.
fuck.
Fortunately, this gives Reginald enough time to recover. He is back in the fight, swinging and stabbing while dodging blows from the club and bolts of dark energy from the Nerulean priests. Although nearly dead, you get to your feet and fight on, stabbing and slashing at anything you can. The gods must truly smile upon you today, for soon all your enemies, even the ogre, lie dead around you. Gore is everywhere, and you feel like you are going to collapse from your wounds. Your morale goes up 5 points. As you and Reginald catch your breath, from somewhere in the castle echoes the distant raspy cackle of the dark spirit with the hellish eyes. A chill goes up your spine. You do not want to tangle with that thing again. You suspect neither your spells nor blades can harm it. Perhaps it would be wise to run from this cursed place. On the other hand, maybe you could afford to take a few seconds to search the bodies of your recently fallen enemies. But there is still the matter of the merchant daughter. What do you do? 1. Search the bodies. 2. Find Sibba first.
Siba.
3. Flee the castle.
How about Siba?
Come, Reginald, we must find her, you say. The two of you are debating where exactly you should go to accomplish this when there is a blood-curdling scream not far off. Before you can react, you see Sibba, her eyes bloodshot, run into the candlelight.
What?
Your morale goes up a point. Gods be praised, you exclaim. Gods, we must flee! A monster comes! Sibba shouts. The 3 of you run. The ears, you complain as you run through the castle entrance chamber. You are referring to the goblin corpses from which you could harvest trophies. No number of rubbery ears are worth your soul, Reginald exclaims. Despite your present anxiety, this strikes you as somewhat funny, and you plan to remind him of his words later,
This is
if you survive.
hilarious.
For now, you do as your friend advises and keep running. The 3 of you retreat to the forest. You are all exhausted, and so once safely away from that cursed ruin and reasonably certain no evil follows, you make camp. Because you are still in goblin country, you decide against the campfire. Instead, you will have to just make do with the sleeping roll in your backpack. It is a rather cold night, and you notice Sibba carries nothing but the ripped-up clothing on her back. What do you do? 1. Offer to share a blanket. 2. Offer her your blanket. 3. Shrug and go to sleep. You cad! I am tempted to give you some points for your bold choice, but unfortunate, this scene does not play out that way. Your morale goes down a point.
Ah, man.
You invite Sibba to share your blanket with you. She cocks her head, gives you a suspicious look, and politely declines. Reginald offers his own blanket. She smiles at him, takes the blanket with a curtsy,
I bet
and
I
goes
will
off
give
to
her a
find a tree
blanket.
to curl up around. It would have been warmer still with me, you think to yourself. Alas, not everyone can be as practical as you are. Since Reginald is cold anyway, he decides to take the first watch. You are awoken well before dawn and loan him your blanket
Mana
as you
plus.
sit up to keep an eye out for danger. Resting gave you 8 life and 8 mana.
Amazing.
As you settle into your watch, your eyes wander to the sleeping merchant daughter. A sliver of moonlight has escaped through the branches above and illuminates her delicate nose. You decide that it is a pretty little nose. For whatever reason, this leads you to wonder if even your pinky would fit into one of her tiny nostrils. You chuckle to yourself as you imagine the expression on her face at waking with your finger in her nose, and then you feel a pang of guilt for imagining this. The young maiden has just lost her father. I should not make sport of her, even in my mind, you think.
Danger?
Reginald rolls over his eye slits. He is only half awake. I understand invisibility. I can turn invisible, at last. This spell has eluded me for so long. At least, I think I understand, you say as you point down at the arcane symbols in your book.
Oh.
Go to sleep.
Reginald slurs, and then his head falls back to the ground.
Oh man,
This is goblin country, and I am on watch. I dare not sleep, you say. But Reginald does not hear you. He is snoring again. It turns out that you are not so vigilant after all. At some point, as you gaze at the candle flame, you fall asleep.
What next? What next?
Awaken. Someone is near.
Reginald whispers as he shakes you. You sit up groggily. It is early morning. At first, all you hear are singing birds. Then, sure enough, voices trickle in through the trees. Not goblins. Not in the daytime, you think. They approach upon the trail, Sibba says, huddling in her blanket.
To the trail, then. But keep quiet, says Reginald.
Why? Why not stay still and let them pass? Asks Sibba. Because we are adventurers, you whisper fiercely as you gather your backpack.
Yep.
Refusing to be left by herself, Sibba follows as you creep up to the edge of the trail. Thank the gods she is not sniffling or otherwise making a racket. You have just taken up your position in the brush when you see the first of a column of priests of Nerul. Several of them are speaking casually, loudly even,
God
as
damn
though
it.
they and not the goblins own this part of the woods. As they pass by, you see in the middle of the column a large stretcher made of thick wooden branches and rough spun fabric. It is carried by 8 priests. Upon the stretcher is a pure white horse, whose legs are bound with rope. Not a horse, but a unicorn.
Yes.
You have not seen one before, but the long, soft, glowing horn is a dead giveaway. Several meters behind the main party are a tall man and a woman. You know the young woman. Or to be precise, you know of her. She is the beautiful Lady Igraine, daughter of Lord Igraine. Her father holds a keep and estate some distance from town, and her family comes to Ring City for annual tournaments. More than once you have gazed wistfully at her from the cheap seats far in the corner of the jousting arena. Allow me to take a moment to apologize to those listeners who in real life prefer to gaze wistfully at handsome men, since you are playing the part of a heterosexual male wizard and are now gazing most wistfully at this woman.
Heterosexual? Seriously, dude?
Allow me to take a moment to apologize to those listeners who in real life prefer to gaze wistfully at handsome men, since you are playing the part of a heterosexual male wizard and are now gazing most wistfully at this woman. You are disappointed and somewhat horrified, though, not because she is a woman, but because she is, in fact, a Nerulean priest. And the man with her, you wonder. After a moment, you recognize him as her father, Lord Igraine. To think a man of such an illustrious line would get mixed up with this evil lot. Anyway, back to Lady Igraine. Her jet-black hair is pulled back to reveal a most shapely, long neck. Her flawless skin glows in the dawn light. It is as though the sun itself, desperate to touch her, has found a path through the forest canopy. The golden unholy symbol of Nerul hanging over her bosom contrasts nicely with her large brown eyes.
We cannot go back there. Not yet,
Lord Igraine says. Why would we go back ever? The ruin offers no decent bath, Lady Igraine replies.
The same lady.
There is some unfinished business. However, it can wait,
Lord Igraine says as he absently pats the pocket of his immense fur-lined coat.
The Old One will move on from Castle Inverness to seek the living. Let us hope he does not exact revenge upon us.
After the column has passed out of earshot, Reginald sighs.
A unicorn, was it not? Where did they find such a creature?
And what do they plan to do with it, you ask?
I wager they do not plan to simply feed her apples and comb her mane,
Reginald replies. Her? It is a lady unicorn, you ask?
Oh, I did not look in that, decisive region, Reginald blushes.
Such craven and pathetic simpletons, Sibba seethes as she glares after the column of priests disappearing around a bend. I propose we tie each of them down and cut off one finger at a time. We will bind their wounds to ensure they will not lose too much blood and fall unconscious. I will then take their eyelids and...
Oh,
I do not think all that will be necessary, you interrupt. There are perhaps 24 of them. I do not think we will have the time for all that, work. You and Reginald exchange perplexed looks, and then Reginald whispers in your ear,
Young maidens love unicorns.
Sibba regards the two of you with hard eyes. We should attack them now and make them pay for their transgressions.
There are too many, Reginald protests, even with the element of surprise.
I thought you said you were adventurers, Sibba interrupts.
Adventurers, not idiots,
Reginald replies, his pride clearly hurt. There are only 3 of us, and they are slow by their burden. We could cut through the woods and get ahead of them. We shall ambush them as they come by.
Or we could follow them from a distance and learn more about our quarry. Perhaps strike at a more opportune time, Reginald says.
And perhaps they will notice us following them. Or perhaps they are journeying to some vile fortification that we cannot hope to storm. I say we ambush them now while they are in the open, Sibba says.
What do you say? 1. Ambush them. 2. Follow them.
Why is our demure, frightened merchant daughter suddenly wishing to play the role of a bloodthirsty battle tactician?
Yeah, man.
You wonder even as you say. Dear Sibba, we will mete out justice to these villains for the death of your father among countless evil deeds in due time. You are not trained in the art of war as Reginald and I are. Even if we set a successful ambush, their numbers are simply too great for 2 men. There are 3 of us, Sibba says fiercely as she thrusts out her palm. A blade for me? Certainly adventurers have more weapons than they need.
Oh.
Reginald shrugs, unbuckles a dagger belt, and hands it to her.
Even if they scurry off to fortifications of some kind, we will take them. I have the trust of the captain of the guard of Ring City. He will not suffer evil so close, says Reginald.
The 3 of you set off after the priests, while keeping a good distance away, out of sight most of the time. Luckily, their party is so noisy that tracking them is trivial. After a few hours, your quarry leaves the trail and hikes over a field. You now have to follow a bit closer in order to not lose them. Soon, they stop on a hill with a large slab of granite at the top. They set the unicorn down on this slab and surround it. They begin chanting. The chant is in Infernal, but you can only make out a few words from here. They are chanting a prayer, you think. Something about forgiveness.
I am no Nerulean priest, but I do not think this bodes well for the unicorn, says Reginald.
They mean to sacrifice him,
Sibba says.
Oh, shit.
The unicorn is a him? Reginald asks.
Yes, I observed his, when they carried him by our hiding spot,
Sibba responds. Irrelevant, you say in exasperation. Our enemies stand in the open and on high ground. We cannot approach unnoticed. Allow me to lure them to you to the forest edge. I shall play the part of the frightened lost girl. They will be overjoyed to recapture what they lost. You can then attack from your hiding places, says Sibba.
No, my lady, they may harm you, says Reginald.
I will disembowel them, she says, brandishing the dagger Reginald lent her.
I understand your anger for what they did to your father, but do not die a fool, says Reginald.
A fool, am I? Sibba asks,
You do
her
act
face
like
in
one.
such a visage of malice that you and Reginald both take a step back.
Reginald
Reginald stutters.
Perhaps stealth would serve us better, you interject. I might turn invisible, creep into their midst, and cut the unicorn free.
My friend, surely your powers are best spent spewing forth gouts of deadly fire, not sneaking about like a rat. Fire and steel, simple and effective, says Reginald.
What do you do?
1. Use fire and steel. Requires 4 mana. 2. Turn invisible. Requires 4 mana.
3. Use Sibba as bait.
Let's use her.
Very well. We shall help you get your vengeance, you tell Sibba. If you have any wish to live, do not fight them. Simply lure them into the forest and allow Reginald and myself to do the bloody work. You and Reginald take up ambush positions on each side of an animal trail. When you are ready, Sibba walks off toward the evil priest hill. Soon you hear shouting, and then Sibba sprints past your hiding place. You see 3 Nerulian priests chasing her, and they appear to be running perfectly into your ambush position.
Cool.
Nice job, Sibba, you think. You had hoped to lure more than 3 since you counted more than 20 total.
Oh,
Killing this trio will do little to thin their numbers. Still, 3 dead villains is a good start, and you cannot allow these men to catch Sibba. What do you do? 1. Blast them with flames. Requires 4 mana. 2. Firebolt one of them. Requires 2 mana. You signal for Reginald to wait so you can use your Fan of Flame spell without burning him. But he is too intent on the priests. There is no time to waste. You jump out several yards ahead of the onrushing priests and outstretch your fingers. The priests cannot break their momentum and tumble right into the flames, screaming as they fall and roll on the ground. Reginald leaps out from the bushes with his sword and finishes them off. Your morale goes up 2 points. Presently, Sibba trots out of the forest. She stops short of the fallen priests and beams down at them. Wonderful! You should set their heads upon spikes to decorate our camp.
what?
Well, it is not time to start playing with their body parts just yet, you say.
I agree.
They have lost only 3 men out of perhaps 2 dozen. I heard a woman scream. Was it the frightened little girl or Banton? A voice carries from the direction of the hill. Laughter trickles in through the trees. We had better do something quick before the suspicions of our remaining enemies are aroused, Reginald whispers.
Oh, you caught me!
Sibba claps her hands excitedly. Don those cloaks, raise the hoods, and drag me up the hill. They are not so stupid as to mistake us for their comrades in broad daylight, says Reginald. Well, we dare not attack so many without surprise, and we cannot simply sneak up on them now. Surely they are watching the wood, you say. Keep your backs to them as you drag me, Sibba says. Reginald shakes his head. This ambush worked well enough. Perhaps we could call more of them into the wood. Divide them further. Shout to them that we need help searching for the girl. I have enough power. I could become invisible and go up there alone to cut the unicorn free, you think. Obviously a risky move. A slightly less costly option in terms of mana would be to cast an illusion of goblins to serve as a distraction on one side, as Reginald charges up the hill on the other. Titus, Banton, come now! The ceremony must continue! One of the Nerulian priests shouts in the distance. What do you do? 1. Cast illusion. Requires 2 mana. 2. Turn invisible. Requires 4 mana. But you don't have enough. 3. Reginald and Sibba make their way towards one edge of the wood, while you creep up to a spot with a clear view of where you shall cast your illusion. Meanwhile, the priests shout threats and insults to their perceived laggard companions. Some of them begin chanting, and it looks like they are going to resume their ceremony without the others. You have the goblins materialize out of the woods and charge up the hill, snapping and yipping. The morning sun glints off of their spear tips and sword blades. What a nice touch. A priest raises the alarm and the others turn toward the threat.
Ah, great.
Goblins! In daylight! One of them shouts. Other priests begin casting spells, and soon the hiss of their death magic slices through the air into the onrushing horde. You try to have the goblins react realistically. Several fall as the rays rip through them. Nevertheless, you know you cannot keep this ruse up for long. Meanwhile, Reginald and Sibba are rushing up the hill from the other side.
Humans and goblins! Magical trickery! Kill the humans!
Shouts Lord Igraine from somewhere in their midst. Before the priests can turn their full attention to Reginald and Sibba, the two reach the priest's circle, hacking and stabbing. This causes a fair amount of confusion. However, they are already beginning to rally, and you know Reginald and Sibba will not be able to survive a barrage of death magic. You charge up the hill, shouting at the top of your lungs, while trying to maintain enough concentration on your illusion to keep it going. Granted, many of the priests now realize the hoax, but there are still a few fighting the phantoms. You need their attention divided if you have any hope of survival. You are nearly upon them before a dark, hissing ray strikes you in the abdomen. You crumple over. Oh! You lost 7 life.
Oh, shit.
You have 5 life. As you try to rise, a wild-eyed priest charges at you with a short sword raised. Just before you think he will cut you down, a horn rips through his chest. The unicorn, you realize. Reginald or Sibba must have freed him in the confusion, and now you have a fierce mythical beast on your side. Your morale goes up 3 points. Good sir, the unicorn says to you as he withdraws his horn from the body of the priest. He then spins around and continues to kick and gore in a frenzy, shouting at the priests. You will pay for your iniquities! You are frozen in surprise. You have never seen a horse talk.
Yeah.
His horsey lips do not move about like that of a human. Rather, his mouth simply opens and the words spill out. Of course, now is not the time to be impressed by talking horses. Now is the time for smiting evil. You pull yourself together and rush forth, stabbing frantically. You are a wizard, not a warrior, so there is no skill to your butchery. Fortunately, the priests seem equally incompetent in a close-quarters fight. Lord Igraine is a few meters away, a dagger in one hand, shouting orders. Kill the beast! Shouts Lord Igraine from amidst the other priests. Spells are cast and the air fills with hissing, dark bolts of energy. You duck behind the stone as one sizzles above you. Peeking over the stone, you see several dark bolts strike the unicorn, and it whinnies in pain. Most of the remaining priests are so focused on the unicorn that they do not even notice Reginald joining the rear of their fray, swinging his sword with a grim smile on his face. Somehow they are oblivious to the butchery behind them. In the name of Nerul, die! The Lady Igraine shouts from her father's side as she sends forth a crackling ray into the side of the unicorn's head. The magnificent horse crashes to the ground. Behind! Behind! Someone shouts. Now the priests turn their attention to Reginald. He cannot stand against so many. You charge, dagger in hand, shouting like a madman. With you striking from one side and Reginald on the other, the remnants of the priests scatter. In a flurry of stabs, you cut down a final one before he reaches the woods.
Oh, shit.
A shadow falls across your path, and you whirl about. It is Sibba. Her ragged dress is blotched with blood, and the dagger Reginald lent her drips with the gore of a fresh kill. She has a manic smile on her face.
What?
Revenge! Revenge for my captivity! She exclaims. She then runs off, presumably to hunt down more fleeing priests. You are considering joining her when you catch a glimpse of the long, beautiful hair of Lady Igraine disappearing into the forest below. You rush into the woods to investigate. Sitting propped against a fallen log only a few meters away is Lord Igraine, his glassy, lifeless eyes
stare down at his entrails spilling out upon his lap. There are symbols drawn in blood on large stones nearby. Kneeling beside him is the Lady Igraine. She is searching his pockets. "Where is it?" she shouts at her father and then slaps his face. "Where is what?" you ask as you take a step closer. She looks up at you with surprise, and then she smiles. "Gods be praised! You saved me from my cursed father and his minions!" she exclaims. "Saved you from them? You are a priestess of death, are you not?"
Yeah.
you ask. "You have fantasized about approaching Lady Igraine more times than you can count, but you never expected your first words would be these." "No, no. I was but a slave to my father," she says, her
Liar.
face contorted in rage. She then smiles down at the mangled corpse next to her. "Now he is gone, and I am free. But we must not dally here. Unrul, a monster from another world, stalks nearby." She points at one of the blood symbols scrawled on a nearby rock. The symbol is in Infernal. You look back to see Reginald chasing and hacking priests in the grassy field beyond. "Quickly, gather your friends and follow me," Lady Igraine says urgently. What do you do?
I don't trust you.
1. Flee with her. 2. Demand her surrender. 3. Attack her. You witness this woman strike down a unicorn with black magic. It will take more than a beautiful smile to erase that foul deed, you think. Your morale goes up a point.
Amazing.
Forget the others. Let us flee together. Show me the way to safety, you exclaim to the Lady Igraine. She flashes you a huge, beautiful smile and turns to lead you. She must have heard you rushing up behind her because she takes only a few steps before turning to face you, snarling, "In the name of Nerul!" You interrupt her spell with a stab just above her collarbone. She opens her mouth and spouts blood. Again and again you stab her until she lies on the ground, motionless. What a grisly and sad ending for the two of us, you think, looking down at Lady Igraine. Of course, there never had been two of you, but your dreams were real enough. Sighing, you wonder, she had been looking for something on her father. What was it?
It's a dagger.
Just then, Reginald runs up to you, breathing hard. "The priests mean to regroup. I hear them calling for one another in the wood. We best move on." He looks down at Lady Igraine. "Is that?" "Yes, it is she," you reply. "We may need a drink tonight," Reginald says. You nod, and then point to Sibba, who is now running around the grassy hill, crying and tripping as though in a panic.
Why?
"Aye," Reginald shakes his head. "Only moments ago she was dashing about this field wielding that dagger of mine like a bloodthirsty assassin. Now who is she? Is this the way of women?" You shrug and jog out onto the grass. As you take Sibba by the wrist to try to calm her, Reginald announces that he will search just a few bodies before fleeing. "No use in letting the vultures swallow our treasure," he says cheerfully. "It is not safe to stay out in the open. We must not dally," you warn your friend, ignoring Sibba as she attempts to pull away from your grasp. Just then, the unicorn stands up. His legs are shaking and his eyes are bulging.
What?
You thought he was dead. "No, not this!" the creature bellows. He pauses for a moment and then screams triumphantly.
This world is mine!
Upon uttering this pronouncement, the unicorn gallops towards the granite slab and proceeds to bash his own head into it. You hear the horn snap with a crack. Blood spatters the white rock as the creature batters his skull over and over. "Gods! Why? No!" Reginald stammers. Sibba commences screaming with renewed vigor. After a few seconds of this self-mutilation, the unicorn, with its jagged stub of a horn, turns and charges down the hill toward you.
What?
All three of you shout as you run with abandon. When you reach the woods, you look back to see the unicorn
thrashing on the grass, screeching in an unearthly tone.
Evil magic, Reginald says. You stare in horror and realize that this magic is beyond your understanding.
Yep.
Motioning for the others to follow you, you say, "We have pressed good fortune long enough. Let us return to Ring City and the company of good people." The three of you set off toward Ring City, your beloved home. You and Reginald are grateful to have some company for the lengthy walk. The two of you have long since exhausted your trove of stories and can nearly predict what each other will say. Sibba, on the other hand, is full of stories of faraway places, creatures, and magic you have never heard of before. The daughter of a merchant must really get around. As it turns out, her family has recently moved to Ring City, and her brother Jordan tends the candle shop there. Nevertheless, she bombards you with questions about the city. She seems to want to know everything from who is who in the noble families down to the local gossip. The time passes quickly. By nightfall, the tall gates of the city rise above you. The guards, typically a suspicious lot, usher the three of you in without hesitation. They have known you and Reginald for years. Reginald was once even a member of the guard. Once inside, you immediately head to your loft. There, you rest and apply healing ointments to your wounds. You hide the majority of your loot under your floorboards. By the following evening, you are refreshed and feel stronger and more powerful than ever. You toss a handful of gold coins into your money pouch and meet up with Sibba and Reginald at the Leering Virgin Inn for some much-deserved celebration. The three of you feast and drink and tell stories, exaggerated, of course, to the inn regulars and otherwise thoroughly enjoy yourselves. "There is no justice, there is no law, there is only power," you quote from the first page of the book bound in the human skin that you lifted from the sacrificial altar in Inverness Castle.
Sounds just like what a zombie-raising, no-good Gorgon's ass would write, Reginald says with slurred speech. The three of you are alone at a table in a corner of the inn, as all of the other patrons have grown bored of your boasting and tall tales and have gone to bed. You page through the book. "Ha! What is this?" you exclaim. "This speaks of Baroness Irulin lying with Sir Roger of Chesterford." "Evil gossip, no more," Sibba says, and then takes a swig of wine. "Well, the account seems rather detailed." You read further, and, oh, Guildmaster Franz Percalis has been skimming gold from the mint, melting the coins down and recasting them with more copper. Aha! I thought the coins from the money changer were light. Reginald begins rummaging in his pockets.
"What is that, a book of dirty secrets?" Sibba asks, pointing at the book accusingly. I rather think it is. Why, this silly little book might be worth more than the rest of our loot put together, you say.
"And you think that the Lady Igraine might have been looking for that book," says Reginald.
He casts his eyes down to the table.
"Oh, I'm sorry. I did not mean to bring her to mind."
You put up your hands to reassure your friend. "It is well that you learn not to judge a woman by her face," you say, doing your best to give a convincing shrug. "I had heard House Igraine had fallen on hard times. Desperation leads to an evil path, does it not?" Reginald nods vigorously, sloshing his drink. The glassy-eyed expression on your friends' faces is the last thing you see before you black out. When you regain awareness, you are standing over a bed shouting, "No! Reginald! You cannot die! Please!" You are pushing down on Reginald's neck, attempting to stem the flow of blood.
What?
It is no use. He is deathly still on the blood-soaked bed, and there is no pulse. "Gods, no!" You shout and run out of the room. You are now in what you recognize as the hallway of the Leering Virgin Inn. You shout for help and look back at him helplessly. From here you can see bloody finger painting on the wall around Reginald, runes in Infernal that appear to be some sort of spell used to harvest power from a soul. There are footsteps from behind, and you turn to see a city guard and an old man approaching.
"Seize that one!"
The old man croaks as he points at you.
"He is the murderer!"
To be continued.
Ah,
You made it to the end. Well played. Your final score is
try the wizard choice too. I can get the 910 too. Just let me try again.
Wizard's choice.
There we go.
Le-
So this kind of
1.
choices you have to
Shout
do
a
it.
warning. No need to panic yet. 1.
Cut the ears off,
Get the 1. Hide in the
and then
castle in 1.
castle.
In up 1. Follow Reginald.
Jump,
Use 1. Push rocks.
burn it,
You 1. Prepare a wall to
enter,
2. 1. Move on.
search,
1.
open the door,
With a 1. Blast it! Requires 4 mana. 2.
let go goblins in,
You yell at 1. Investigate the sound.
investigate,
1. Escort her out. 2. There are a ton of hiding places in this. The castle is 1.
unhood it,
1. Run for the stairs.
apologize,
1. Read another story.
attempt,
Beautiful. The 1. Attack with
ah,
spells.
shit.
Requires 2 mana. 2. Attack without spells. 3. Cast charm.
Attack without spell,
There are 2 of you and only. Now that you are in the room. 1. Break the chair.
search the around it,
You- 1.
use the key,
1. Hide back in the room.
prepare a
2.
spell,
Prepare a spell. Requires 2 mana.
cast the illusion,
An interesting. 1.
goblin,
A horde of goblins. You. Off. 1. Open the door. 2. Leave.
open the door,
Ma-
and then
1.
take what you can and run.
You open your backpack. 1. Try to close
No
it.
time, just run.
You decide there is. 1. Attack with your dagger. 2. Blast them. Requires 4 mana. 3. Charm the ogre. Requires 3 mana. 4.
Char them.
You point to the ogre and recite magical words, pausing now and then to blow kisses into the air. The ogre, who is about to swing his mighty club at Reginald, instead turns his attention to you. You are not entirely sure, but you think you see the soft glow of ogre affection in those large, dark orbs.
Great.
One of the priests throws a large candle at you and then begins reciting a spell. When the poorly aimed and weakly thrown candle misses you, the ogre slams the priest in the face with his club, smashing it like a melon. Yes! Yes! You shout to the ogre. Kill them all! The undead corpse springs at you, but the ogre
Hypnotize.
grabs it by the leg in midair and crashes it to the floor.
Hypnotize all of
The
them.
ogre and the zombies then grapple each other, clawing, biting, and strangling. Reginald has since gathered his wits and slays another of the priests with his sword. The 2 of you fall upon the remaining priest the old medieval way, cutting and stabbing with blades.
Okay.
As you and Reginald... 1. Search the bodies. 2. Find Sibba first.
Search the bodies.
It was hard and dangerous work killing those villains, and now it is time to profit. There is plenty of time for maiden rescuing and running later, you hope. Although you allow yourself only a little time for corpse searching, you find 3 golden unholy symbols and several pouches of gold.
What about Siba?
You earned 110 gold pieces.
She's dead.
Just then, you hear a blood-curdling scream not far away. Before you can react, you see Sibba, her eyes bloodshot, run into the candlelight. Gods, we must flee! A monster comes! The 3 of you run. The ears, you complain as you run through the castle.
Yeah, I already did that.
1. offer to share a blanket.
Offer her your blanket.
My lady, you bow. My blanket is yours.
You present the blanket in your outstretched arms. Listener, you know how to be a gentleman. Siva smiles, curtsies, and takes the blanket from you.
Chivalry is alive and well in the fallow land forest.
She says to you. She then quickly gathers up a pile of leaves and pine needles into...
Okay, done. No
You wait
thanks.
until Reginald begins snoring before you pull your spellbook out of your backpack. We can... 1. Ambush them. 2.
Follow them.
Why is our demure, frightened merchant? 1. Use fire and steel. Requires 4 mana. 2. Turn invisible. Requires 4 mana.
Let's do the invisible.
Quickly, you cast your spell and creep up the hill. The evil priests are bunched together closely in a circle around the slab of granite, so you have to take care. It is critical that you do not touch anyone, because that would break your invisibility illusion. Your spellbook is very explicit about this point. Pass not even like a breeze, for even the wind is felt by man.
What happened?
Become nothing, and nothing will know you. You recall the spell instructions saying, 1 priest shifts to one side, and you have enough room to pass without so much as brushing their long sleeves. Your morale goes up a point. Although you have avoided touching
Let's
anyone,
see.
you cannot help making some measure of noise with your footfalls. Fortunately, their chanting deafens them to your passage. Now that you have passed into their inner circle, you can make out their words in the infernal language. We praise you, Ancient One. You are free. Servants, slaves to your will. We ask not for mercy. We ask only to serve. We praise you, Ancient One. You are free. Servants, slaves to your will. We ask not for mercy. We ask only to serve. Over and over they repeat this. One of the hooded men looks familiar. Belfort, the farmer. He comes into Ring City to sell his apples every harvest. You know him because he always gets drunk and makes trouble. The guards have learned to keep an eye on him when he has coin in his pocket. You would never have imagined he was mixed up with dark powers, though.
Yeah.
A few others look familiar too, although you cannot place them.
Why
They
you
must be
explaining-
local.
You idiot, why you exploring them? Go help the unicorn, dumbass.
A few others look familiar too, although you cannot place them. They must be locals of Ring City. You are now near the unicorn and you have your dagger out. You have a couple of options. You could simply cut the unicorn free and start the fight. Or you could try to scare the priests first. 1. Use an illusion. Requires 2 mana. 2. Cut the unicorn loose. Why waste my magic power on illusions when I have a real unicorn to set loose? You think.
Man.
You hope the unicorn is fiercer than he looks. The unicorn is still tied to the stretcher, and his hooves are tied together. He is struggling to free himself, and so cutting his hooves free will be a little tricky. Nevertheless, you decide to cut the hooves free first, since the stretcher ropes are at least keeping the unicorn somewhat stationary. After that, you plan to cut the ropes binding him down. The first pair of hooves goes smoothly. Your sharp dagger slices through the rope without touching the hooves. Unfortunately, the sudden relative freedom of the unicorn excites him into a renewed frenzy. You get the other hooves free, but your blade and hand touch his leg in the process.
Ah, shit.
The chanting stops and there are gasps from the crowd around you. I am visible, you realize. One priest is standing nearby with an unsheathed dagger, a sacrificial dagger, you presume. He lunges at you. The two of you stab each other at the same time. He stabs you in the stomach, and you stab him in the throat. Oh! You lost 4 life.
Ah, shit.
You have 10 life. As the priest falls to the ground, choking on his own blood, you slash at the remaining bonds, holding the unicorn down. The creature looks at you and says, "Thank you, good sir. Then he is free and he leaps up. You will pay for your iniquities, he announces to the others. Your morale goes up 4 points.
Amazing.
You nearly shout in surprise. You have
Okay, skip.
kill the beast.
What next?
You rush in. 1. Flee with her. 2. Demand her surrender. 3.
Attack her.
What a grisly and... The 3 of you set... You made it to the end! You made it to the end! Well played! Your final score is...
I win. So that's all. You never died. Yep. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you guys think of my gameplay. I'm gonna catch you guys inshallah next time when we meet again. The idea version. Bye bye, take care, love you all. Allah Hafiz, sayonara. Pakistan Zindabad. Peace.